First off, thanks for everyone for coming. My name is Peter Nixon. I am a mega game designer here in the U.S. This is the Wouldn't It Be Awesome If panel, and this is where I invited a bunch of different designers from a bunch of different perspectives, and they're going to talk about uh, just like some of the big ideas that they've had. So bigger, bolder, better, whatever. And so there's going to be a little bit of a cycle just to kind of keep things a little bit more focused, whereas the person will present, and then the next person will present, and whoever just presented will kind of provide commentary with me to the next presenter. But first off is my idea, my big Wouldn't It Be Awesome? And so I'd like to introduce Alex Beck from Horizon Mega Games.
Hey, hello everyone.
And so Alex Beck is going to be providing a little bit of commentary to my big idea, if that is all right with him.
Of course, yeah, go for it.
Are you ready? Buckle up, Alex.
I'm ready.
We're going back. We're going back to the year 1520 to the Field of the Cloth of Gold. Alex, are you familiar with the Field of the Cloth of Gold?
Never heard of it, no.
It is, so I'm sure you recognize this lovely mug up here. This is a famed diplomatic meeting between a young King Henry VIII, who's very insecure about his masculinity, meeting with young King Francis I, I believe, of France, who's also very insecure about his masculinity. And so it was this entire thing. They planned it out. It took years to plan. It was a multi-week meeting, and it was all engineered by this guy named Cardinal Wolsey, who wanted to make it like a grand diplomatic meeting. And it was a big party, and they had to have the field artificially leveled because no king's tent could be higher. There was plenty of aggressive diplomatic brinksmanship is the term that I've heard used to describe it.
So it's kind of medieval toxic masculinity, the mega game, basically.
Yes. But that is actually not my complete pitch.
Okay.
I'm going to ask you a question, Alex. We're going to fast forward ahead to the most expensive party ever thrown.
Okay.
And so, have you heard of this at all, by chance?
No, these are gaps in my history.
Yes, this is just as cool in my opinion. Well, cool's a strange word to describe it, but this was thrown by the Shah of Iran before he was overthrown, and it was essentially to invite a bunch of Western powers to Iran and to show off how progressive and stable Iran was. And so, in order to do that, this autocratic regime used autocratic methods to build this entire green facilities in the desert. And so it was a different form of toxicity for sure, but there was definitely some toxicity going on there, right? This was very shortly before he was overthrown. And I should mention the Field of the Cloth of Gold meeting was also a failure because England and France went to war shortly afterwards. So my question for you, Alex, is what do these two grand meetings have in common that I think would make an amazing mega game mechanic?
I assume it's something to do with party planning, but I've really got no idea. So you're gonna have to
You are pretty much spot on.
Okay.
I think arranged seating should be a mega game mechanic. I think it would be so good. And you have to worry about, you can't sit the U.S. next to Arabia because that would be bad press. You gotta. I think planning a big, huge party like this would be a really fun exercise / mega game activity.
I like it. I think that's amazing. It's a different thing. It kind of fits the kind of stuff Becky was talking about in her talk earlier. Just like not war game related, just sort of totally different. But yeah, could be really fun. I think. Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah. So I'm just kicking this off, and I don't want to take up too much time. So I think I'm going to shift next up onto you, Alex. So Alex, let's hear about your grand idea.
All right, cool. So I've very much taken the kind of fantasy idea of this, of just doing something that maybe one day kind of thing. Not really thought through the logistics. Probably not possible right now, but I'm going to go with it anyway. So it's Mega Crisis in Mega Elysium. I don't know if you've got the slide.
Yes.
Thank you. Very basic slide. So really thinking about this, the reason I want to do this is actually about recreating what I think is my favorite Megagame experience that I had. So obviously many people on here will have probably been at the Urban Nightmare State of Chaos wide area game. One of your local places probably hosted it. Were you there, Peter? I think. Did you?
Yeah, I was actually at Stefan Salvacruz's run Urban Nightmare Outpost. We were the West Virginia / Kanawha state.
Cool, amazing. So I was, obviously being in London, I was actually part of the sort of federal team. I was in the Pentagon team. And that was just an incredible experience. The actual gameplay mechanics were fairly standard Mega Game stuff. You know, it was sending stuff around on a map, really. But it was the fact that we had sort of a dozen games being run, each with, 50, 60 players, whatever they might have been, all making decisions, all doing things, which then fed into our game. So we were getting information from, dozens of people. We were having to then make decisions on that, and then knowing that our decisions not only would affect a map like they might in a normal Mega Game, but would actually affect hundreds of people's game. So choosing to send the 82nd Airborne to the state that was Illinois, the sort of Illinois replacement rather than Michigan, would have changed hundreds of people's days. Those in Michigan were going to be very unhappy. Illinois were, going to be very happy and have a lot more to do. So it felt really important in character and really important from sort of a gameplay kind of point of view as well. So it was just this incredible, weighty, important experience. I felt much closer to probably what being in the real Pentagon's like than what you might get in a smaller game of 30 or 40 people.
So I'm curious. I'd love to flesh this out a little bit.
Okay.
What would be the federal team for Mars? Would they be on Earth or would they be in Mars, you think, in your vision?
So yeah, nice segue into the next bit. So I think to replicate the kind of hierarchical sort of thing that existed in Urban Nightmare is quite relatively easy to do. You could stick, as you say, like an Earth team, or just sort of, and then have a lot smaller teams underneath it. But I think really what I want to get to is that felt like we were just lucky. We happened to be in the right game, in the right roles to get that experience. But it was only kind of, 30 people in that kind of federal level out of whatever it was, 500 players around the world. So what I really want to get to is where not 30 players are in the right roles getting that kind of incredible experience, but a game which by its nature is quite a lot flatter, but allows hundreds of people to have a game experience where they can actually influence all of those people in that huge game. So that's where I'm coming at it from. Pretty ambitious. But.
That sounds pretty awesome. Yeah, I remember I was actually the federal liaison, so I was sending email messages through the internal email infrastructure that they set up that was entirely custom built for the game, and that was just so incredibly impressive, and just the fact that the sheer amount of communication and logistics behind it was just so awesome. So
yeah, no, it was incredible, and I think there's probably a reason Jim hasn't redone it. The amount of work and effort required that went into it. But as I said, I've not really gone into the logistics of this. In an ideal world, you probably want to do it on not as many sites. I think you'd probably want to cut it down to maybe 3 or 4 different sites potentially. Don't know. I'd say not really thought through logistics. This is fantasy game planning.
Yeah, I am curious. So I obviously I wasn't at the first Crisis in Elysium. Is there are there 2 large teams, or is it more like a bunch of smaller teams in the original design?
Sure. So kind of, I guess, to kind of expand that and the kind of general idea I had would be, at the moment, for those that don't know, Crisis in Elysium is basically a game of a Martian revolution, sci-fi game set kind of 100 and odd years in the future. Mars has been colonized for decades, and then as a classic sci-fi trope, there's a revolution, people wanting independence and deciding their own future on Mars rather than being controlled by Earth. At present, it's quite it's very much a factional game. That's kind of one of its kind of main themes. So there's about 12 factions at the moment, each with a kind of standard team size of 5 or 6 people, like you get in a lot of games. So the first step in making that into a much bigger game would be expand those factions out to be much, much bigger. 30, 40, 50 people potentially in each of these factions. So you'd have kind of a full hierarchy of military players, the radical revolutionaries, politicians, diplomats, spies, special forces, and so on. They'd all be playing. But I think the real key thing would be to try and not have sort of a dozen separate hierarchies. Again, it's just a standard hierarchical team, but try and keep that flat. And that is kind of a theme of the game. It's all about local kind of interactions at the street level. It's kind of local forces dealing with sort of local kind of political deals, and it's that kind of thing. And I'd want that kind of level of flatness still in there as well, if possible.
Very cool. That's cool. I mean, you got your work cut out for you, man. That's
yeah, I do.
Yeah. I love how your idea is let's make a mega game, even just more mega, you know?
Exactly, and the same thing with the maps. At the moment, there's 3 maps, one for each dome of the city. We'd spread that out to maybe 20 or 30 maps. Really break it down at the sort of street by street level, rather than just neighborhood. You know, as it currently are, it's quite abstract, but actually really break it down to that local level, and really.
Oh, sorry. It does kind of, you know, there's all sorts of these Mars Revolution games that have kind of been done in like mega game form. I wonder if you could somehow synergize and make it like one storyline, but different games with the same like factions. Maybe that would cut down on like development time and allow for, you know, more. Anyways, wouldn't it be awesome if, anyways?
Yeah, no, I think, kind of connects. It's a slightly different idea, but connected mega games is definitely something we've experimented a bit. We did a different version of Urban Nightmare, Jim's most recent one, where the first game, the ending of that set up the starting position of the second game. You know, when we ran it twice, kind of thing. Cool. So so you definitely could do more of that. That was probably, even adding even more complexity to what's already a crazy idea. But really, what I'm trying to get at is that idea of just this big network of relationships between all the different players, and many more than you get in an all mega game. Say have hundreds, and then allow all of them to have the power to influence the game, even if it's just a sort of ripple effect through that relationship network. So a group of players does something slowly that changes the whole game for everybody. Trying to, as I say, replicate that Pentagon experience that I got in the State of Chaos game.
All right, Alex, we're gonna have to keep going. So
that's fine. No, that's it. That's the idea.
Yeah. Please stick around for commentary as I bring on Matt Bainbridge. Matt, you there?
I am, yes.
Yes, Mr. Megagame himself. Are you ready do you want to preface your slide at all, or should we jump right in?
Well, this may get a little bit weird, but Pete's pitch to me was very much if you could do anything. So, yeah, let's have a go.
All right.
All right, okay. So, what type of games do I love? I love mega games. And I also love street games. So if none of you have ever played a street game, they're typically in the built environment, and you're running around or walking around kind of solving clues. You're using the world around you to interact with for the purpose of a game. So the picture here for street games is for Fire Hazard, which I used to help out with, and they divide part of London up into a half a kilometre square, and there's places you go to kind of solve puzzles. And what else do I love? I love augmented reality games. So things like Ingress and Pokemon, again, kind of interacting with your environment with a lovely game layer kind of slapped on the top of that. So these are all kind of games that I enjoy playing. What genres do I love? Well, I'm quite partial to vampires because I'm a terrible 90s child who grew up reading Anne Rice and loves the stat and playing Vampire the Masquerade. So I've got a little bit of a penchant for vampires. And so what should we do with all of these? Let's smash it all together because there's nothing better than an absolute Frankenstein's monster of a concept and a game. So what would this look like? Can I have it up to 100? I've kind of seen the Fire Hazard games played with 200 in a much smaller area. Take a city, you make a kilometre grid out of it. So say you take a city of London, divide people into vampire teams with distinct themes. Think very much the Masquerade. You've got your good old magic vampires, your brute force vampires, people who love the forest, your artsy types.
Yeah, your punks, yeah.
Yeah, basically very much the good old Vampire the Masquerade factions. And they compete for resources, and they've got political events to manage, and there's riddles and puzzles to solve in their environment as they open up their wonderful kind of urban fantasy world around them. You train resources for gain and votes for political positions. And rather than a map that you're doing this on in a hall, you're moving around a city to do it instead, and you're using an augmented reality on your phone to help you find these things. So when you go out and you find a Pokemon, instead of a Pokemon, there's going to be a werewolf in front of you instead, and you've now got to fight this werewolf. Or rather than a crypt on a map, there's actually an actual crypt in front of you on your phone, possibly in a cemetery in London. So you can use the built environment for a map rather than actually a paper one in a hall, and you can be interacting with the world.
How would you recognize other players, Matt? Would you have to dress up as vampires running around London at lunchtime? Or?
So I have done that. I took part in a game called Shadow of Shoreditch, and you see this guy with the creepy bunny ears here. That's not me, but I wore that costume, running around Shoreditch for a month, scaring the life out of people, and it's absolutely fantastic fun. So yeah, you encourage costuming. People love turning up to street games in all sorts of costumes. Yeah, so there is my slightly wacky idea. Large amounts of players, you can put all the normal politics you do into a game. You're moving around the built environment and using augmented reality to simulate the places right in front of you rather than on a map.
Yeah, this augmented reality, it opens up a whole new field of what players can point at. They could point at anything, like bushes, trees, like other players, like. Guys, this is a whole new thing.
It's revolutionary. No, I love it. I think using the real world and AR is just such a nice little twist on what we normally do in Mega games. Loads of work probably, but it's great. I love the idea.
For sure, yeah.
There's a lot of fun.
It would be a targeted audience type of thing. Like, obviously this wouldn't be, accessible to everybody, right? But I mean, it's cool. It would definitely be awesome.
Yeah, there's a large amount of people who love, like, Ingress and Pokemon still have quite large active communities. Street games have only gone from strength to strength in the last kind of 10 years, but also kind of things like Secret Cinema grew out of street games as well. The people who originally did those were kind of involved in that type of thing, or kind of in parallel. And there are quite a lot of large companies in the UK that do them now. So you get the kind of advantage of, you can, with a little bit of technology and someone who can program, you can put a lot of things like character sheets and resource trackers onto kind of phones for resource trackers and that type of thing. And then use the built environment to actually be wandering around and go, here is so-and-so's dark castle of dread with a couple of werewolves out front.
Very cool.
Nice.
So at this point, Alex, any final thoughts before we say goodbye?
No, I'll get it on the calendar, Matt. We'll schedule it next year.
We'll do it. Okay.
Right.
In the chat, I'm on board with Matt's idea. Helped organize design missions for humans versus zombies. Sounds. Dave Boundy, don't understand what's holding him back. All these things necessary to do so available. Where do I sign? Okay, well, I'll take that as I should be designing this game.
Yeah, I mean, that's the, yep. All right, thank you, Alex. Thank you so much for stopping by. I understand you have a schedule to keep to.
I do have to dash shortly, but no, thank you. Cheers.
Yes. All right, Matt, are you ready to bring on our next panelist?
I am indeed. Let's go.
Okay, I'm going to introduce Lee Kaiser II. Lee, are you there?
I am here. How you guys doing?
Good, Lee. And
one quick.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, just a comment about Matt's game. A convention large enough like Gen Con would be enough square footage or whatever to have it overlaid over a huge convention. And now you already got the players there, and that's a pretty cool idea.
Yeah, something like convention would be great for that, yeah.
If you build it, we will import it. That's for sure. Yeah.
So anyway.
Oh, go ahead, Lee.
Anyways, it sounds like the common theme so far is bigger, and I would have to agree with that theme. I'm assuming that everybody knows of True Dungeon. Does everybody know what True Dungeon is?
Why don't you just describe it briefly?
True Dungeon is something I found at Gen Con. It takes about 20,000 square feet, and it's basically Dungeons and Dragons to the biggest level that you can do inside of a convention. Is that a pretty accurate description?
Yeah, it's also, a lot of the things are physically based, not all of them.
Correct.
But, and it's a legacy, right? So things carry over from year to year.
There's these tokens you get, and the tokens you can use inside the missions, or not missions, inside the adventures. You come back year after year. At the 2019 Gen Con that I was at, anyways. They had 3 or 4 different tracks of physical room-to-room-to-room missions. Again, I use the word missions. So my basic idea is a true dungeon for science fiction. Trying to think of what is the biggest thing that you can do at a convention. What is just the, wouldn't it be awesome if you could take a bunch of different science fiction elements and mash them between the persistent universe and characters and a common set of loot, gear, equipment, etc. And all of these things that you did all add towards the story arc. Alex was talking about the game that added to the all these sub pieces that add to the main game, and that's kind of what I'm looking at. And it's like, okay, what would be the coolest science fiction thing that you could do at a convention? And it's like, well, it's got to have spaceships. You got to be able to fly spaceships. And of course, this is the mega game stuff, and there's a bunch of science fiction mega games. Throw in some laser tags, some robots, and there's a bunch of other board games and RPG games that are all science fiction. I was able to do the Tesla pods at Gen Con, both in 2015 and 2019. And it's like, okay, so just mash all that together into a single story arc that started on Thursday night and ran all the way through Sunday. I'm thinking about Gen Con primarily, and have all of these different sci-fi games and sci-fi elements all feed into it, where let's say you're playing Battlestar Galactica, the board game, and when you finish, you end up getting some of these, you get 1 million credits. My thing is not, whatever. You get 1 million credits or whatever that you can take to the other games, and that counts. It's useful. You actually can take gear, equipment, credits, and components from game to game, all building on this unfolding 4-day story arc.
That's very cool, Lee. Very, very neat. That's awesome.
The upper left pictures are actually I bought a 50-foot enclosed trailer, and I'm going to hopefully put 4 bridges in it. I had the one picture with the I had a bridge in the back of an escape room that closed before I could open. But that's basically my idea. My idea is a true dungeon in space or in science fiction with persistent characters and persistent gear that would actually last maybe year to year.
Okay, so you could kind of go to con one year, come back, and you could basically play the same character, exploring a kind of new environment with your gear, and every year there'd be new things to get because there are new games coming out every year. So you could get your favorite phaser from your new franchise when you come the next year over.
And with some RPG stuff, maybe you're leveling up, maybe you're getting some experience, maybe some whatever your character's getting better. So some RGB elements as well.
Yeah, I love the idea of, like, you have laser tag in here, right? Just as that could be a completely separate exercise, right?
Yep.
And then if you win the laser tag somehow, details to be determined, you get a little war hero badge that you can then take if you want to go take the political game,
Yes.
Or and then you could do stuff about having you could have a galactic council on Sunday that will meet to discuss,
what happens between now and next year. Yeah, there are lots of fun con games to play, and this kind of smashes a whole bunch of them together because people love going around cons and collecting badges and stuff and the different promo materials. So you can literally have people doing that and getting items in game, and they can all mean something.
And since I'm a print and graphic shop, I can actually print these cards in house, so
nice.
I can make gear and loot and whatever.
Yeah, I like it. That sounds like a lot of fun.
This is really, this is the type of idea that just really gets your brain expanding. You know what I mean? I'm going into galactic brain right now of what's possible. It would certainly be awesome. Oh man. Yeah. Well put, Lee.
Thank you.
Matt, any final thoughts?
No, I love this idea. I love kind of interacting with stuff. One of the favorite games I've ever played was actually at a con getting chased around by Slenderman for 48 hours, which was amazing amounts of fun, and you could recreate that type of thing in this. So definitely a goer.
Yes, I think this is when we bid our lovely Mr. Megagame goodbye, but you can see him at the panel coming up, right?
Yes, indeed.
Okay, so you're going to be streaming the watch party for the Shut Up and Sit Down episode of the second Watch
I
Society.
will, yes, myself and Chris Slany Bliss will be doing that just a little later.
Perfect, cool.
So thanks all.
Right.
Bye-bye.
Okay, Lee, you still there?
Yeah, still here.
Okay, cool. All right. Yeah, Lee, one final thought is one of the best things about cons is like meeting the same people like the second and third and fourth time and kind of getting them to know a little bit better and better. And this is just such a natural, I don't even know how to phrase it. It would solicit that, and in a much bigger capacity as well, because you could like, oh yeah, that guy, like he shot a laser like across the room, or like he was an ace robot pilot, like just it's great.
With having the cards and having some actual material goods outside the game, there could be trading, and who knows, there could be bartering, trading, and plotting outside the game and the rest of the con, or at home or whatever. Having a component that persists outside, past the game is kind of cool.
Very cool. All right, Lee, please welcome our next guest from Ottawa Megagames, Leanne Davies. Leanne, are you there?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, and I love that background, by the way.
Yeah, I just picked one of the ones I had there. I don't remember why I picked this one at some point in the past, but it was one of my choices.
Very cool. So, Leanne, one of the reasons why I asked you to come on is I find yourself attracted to kind of pretty serious topics a lot of the times. Would you say that's accurate, or would you say it's just a coincidence because we both sign up to the same game?
That's a great question. Yeah, I guess I do enjoy serious topics, but I guess I do have a general philosophy of the absurd, that I guess anything can become absurd, and so it helps soften it a little bit. But I treat most things very seriously, but with a smile, hopefully.
Yeah. You've been a great player for Owl League and Draft Night in the past. Those were some great stuff. Oh my God, I loved Well, I don't want to get into it, but let's keep focused. Do you want to preface your slide at all?
Sure. When you asked yesterday to present something, I had many thoughts. One was that just to create a bubble with a whole bunch of PPE so we could just play Megagame in person if we had lots of money. I'm like, well, let's just do it in person again. That could be fun.
Smart.
But I went the idealist approach, and a bit more philosophical or psychological was my perspective. So I guess we could go to the next slide. I used a now obsolete word, utopia, as a starting point, where most of what we play is dystopic, which I love as well, and I enjoy reading about it. And utopias can become dystopic quite easily, but I thought it could be interesting if the ultimate goal would be to create the utopia. And the conflict could reside what it is, how does it function, there's so many different perspectives. I imagine these teams of idealist philosophers just kind of working together to create their utopias. I'm not entirely sure what the different roles would be yet. It would probably depend on the setting. A specific system that would be interesting to introduce, it would be different values-based modeling systems, some that they use in psychology or in businesses, and it creates you put time constraints over the decisions, which prevent people from having to think too long for every single decision, and you create personal, interpersonal, business. You can use the system for basically any decision. And what's great about that type of decision making is that it's inherently flexible, as opposed to rigid. And often the rigidity of decision making can lead, I think, a bit more to the dystopic world. For example, if you believe in fun is one of your values, and one day a certain activity like flying in the sky could be fun, but the next day it isn't. So you're making a different decision, but applying the same value. Anyways, it's a terrible example, but I just thought of one.
No, it makes sense. It demonstrates the fluidity of thinking and kind of the I mean, you said non-rigidity, right? But
yes.
Like the structures will have to adapt.
Precisely.
Right? Because of resource use and degradation and people changing their minds. And yeah, I love the idea of a bunch of I mean, you get that sense in a lot of the games that have like leftist communist factions, where you have kind of infighting over the correct way
yes.
of communism, and how so that's what it reminds me of in terms of the idealist philosophers. But if you take it to even like a tech utopia stance, like just what you can do is just it's absurd.
Yeah, exactly. And I love that absurdist angle where what are we constraining ourselves based on our realities versus what our imagination could work towards. And if we had a scenario like the minimum viable population scenario, where you are either part of the 160 people that have been chosen to continue Earth, or you helped create the document that would help them decide what they do or set up their society. What if you're only limited by your imagination, what might you create? And it can be very interesting and fascinating, and there will be conflicts. I mostly am trying to figure out what the breakout rooms are and what kind of debates and things happen in them, and I just go on and on thinking about it.
I think you really hit on something there as well when you discussed the frameworks in which values are modeled. I think is a real cool, potentially inspiration for actual game mechanics.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what you were describing. And
yes.
I just like to echo that of like, that's really unique. Like I haven't heard of that in the past.
No,
yeah. Yeah, if someone in the chat has heard of that, please chime up. But that's really cool, Leanne. Yeah. Lee, I didn't mean to cut you out there. You got any thoughts?
No. Is this something that you're actively working on and building, or is this just a concept that's floating around in your head?
Well, I actually, this has always been, I guess, my aspiration to write short stories and books related to this concept or these types of things. And it wasn't until about a month or two ago that I realized it could be workshopped through the Megagame world, where you could add scenarios, you can do a whole bunch of things. And I thought, oh my goodness, I was very inspired, and I started talking to people about it. Some people get confused, other people are excited, but they can tell that I'm excited. So if nothing else, it's a great thought experiment. But if
are you writing down and chronicling what you're doing? And
yes,
okay,
yeah. So the list of values that exist and across the world is so expansive that you have to create some sort of app to try and generate some prioritization strategies. There's and to be as inclusive as possible. And it's quite a grand scope. But I think if one of the values is education and growth, then it's okay if you've never hit the target, because that's the point, is that you're continuing to try and reach for it.
It's kind of weird that I was one of the commenters or the commentaries on your particular thing. I actually founded a local philosophy group. We got about 1,200 people in it. We meet monthly online, and my specific thing that I'm working on is how to make the world a better place, a utopia type of a thing, and what it's going to take to actually do that. And I've actually got a fair amount of work done towards this. Feel free to contact me outside of this, and I'd be more than happy to help or contribute or to be a sounding board for whatever you need.
That's great. Thanks, Lee. That's awesome. I appreciate that. It always helps to clarify thoughts when you can bounce them off of people, for sure.
Just real quick, are you familiar with John Rawls?
Yes.
Okay, so that's a cool thing for that. Okay, good.
Yeah, very cool. Thank you.
Very cool. Lee, any final thoughts before we usher you off stage with a large cane or large?
No, this is good stuff. It's right up my alley, and I would love to assist in any way possible.
Okay, yeah. Please stick around for kind of the freeform discussion if you're able.
Sure.
But yeah, otherwise, Leanne, please help me welcome our final guest, which is Maddie. Maddie, are you there?
Hi.
Yes.
So I don't have a cool background, but I do have a hat. So there's some spoilers already.
Whoa, spoilers?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, tell me when to hit the next slide.
Well, I think we can go on right ahead. Yeah.
Great.
So as you might have guessed, my pitch is a Christmas mega game. So we're going into the slightly more silly, light-hearted theme over here. My thinking is that it's set essentially in the Klaus's workshop. Everyone plays an elf.
Yes.
You have to make toys and get them delivered to the right children. The central kind of issue or kind of big aim of the game is that you have to keep children believing in Santa. And so there's kind of like a big belief tracker. Whenever you like deliver a toy to the right place, the tracker goes up. And
wow,
if you have kind of like cartoonishly evil corporations who are, basically like commercializing Christmas with all their advertisement, and if they have a really good ad campaign, belief goes down because all the kids are just doing other things. Potentially a mystery where the classes have just disappeared, so we have to figure out where have they gone, what's happened. What else? Yeah, that's kind of the main pitch, just like really fun, really lighthearted.
This is amazing. I love this. This is so cool. I love everything about this, and it can go so many ways. Like, you could also preface it as like Santa Claus is a logistical nightmare, you know.
Yes.
So you have to like, yeah. Yeah, you're getting some great comments, by the way, in the chat here. People are very enthusiastic. Yeah, Leah has a good comment as well. Got to get some Secret Santa mechanic in there as well.
Yes, for sure. Yeah. I've talked to a few people about this, and one that people really like the idea of is like all the reindeer unionizing. Because they're like, we want to be treated fairly. We do hard work as well.
We eat our carrots.
Yeah. And things like having kind of different factions of elves that want to do things different ways. So you have like the really traditionalist elves who, you know, maybe if you've got a game in person, they've got a rocking chair and they come in tweed and they're like, well, we want to make everything out of wood because that's the wholesome traditional way to do things. Mm-hmm. And then you've got the kind of like startup elves who are in bean bags and like beanies in the corner, and they're like, no, Santa, we've got to make apps.
Yeah. That's funny, apps. I didn't even think of that. I was thinking like Xboxes, but apps are even better. Yeah, that's how we make children believe. We just have to get their attention and microtransactions.
Yeah, it's essentially an attention economy game based around Christmas as a concept.
Oh God, that's so good, Maddie.
So yeah, this is, and I really love just like really kind of role play, like lighthearted games. So yeah, this is, I figured Alex did Monsterville Mansion, which was basically Halloween. So I think next one is Christmas.
It's gotta be. We're just, I guess do you guys have Thanksgiving in UK? No, right? That's
no, not really. I mean, Thanksgiving Mega Game, that's another one. Yeah.
It's a whole nother ball game. Well, I'll tackle that one. You handle on Christmas.
Yeah, I'll cover Christmas. You do Thanksgiving. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, then we could do like an entire convention of just holiday themed.
Just go through the whole year. You start with New Year, Easter. Yeah.
That would be ideal because then we could convince the world that we need more holidays because you have to game all the time, and if you have more holidays, then it's more joyful, more utopic. So I think it's a win-win. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanksgiving says, or sorry, Nathan Cheney says Thanksgiving has to incorporate the seating chart arrangement, which I think is hilarious.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Don't let the uncles sit at the kids' table. They'll just.
Bad idea.
Oh, that's so funny. All right, well, this is great. This has so much potential, Maddie. Yeah, it's one of those things where it's so big that it could go so many different ways.
Yeah, I mean, the potential for Wizard Wheezes, I feel like, is enormous. And you can have, all your different kind of elf types. You can have, like a slightly more like trickstery elf who just wants to eat all day and not actually do any work. There's so much, I feel like there's just so much roleplay potential in here.
So can I ask you one or two questions?
Yeah, for sure.
So do you envision Santa being physically represented as a player?
So I would say that the options for me, I would say, are either Santa is not there, or Santa is a what we call a plumpire player. So it's a sort of played control role. So I wouldn't have it as an actual player.
Yeah, if you had an infinite budget, you know what I mean. I think it'd be awesome to hire like a Santa reenactor.
Oh my gosh, yes.
To show up.
Yes, yeah. And they'd be available because you'd probably do this like a little bit before Christmas. Yeah. Yes, you could totally do that. I bet that would be a great gig. Normally they're used to dealing with, little kids, and they're like, well, so this time it's going to be a little bit of a different one. It's all adults, but you really need to stay in character. Also, you're supposed to be way grumpier than you normally are.
That's funny. That's an interesting twist. That would potentially spice things up quite a lot if it turns out he was potentially not the best boss. Hey, so would oh gosh, another idea was you'd have some of the elves might be fans of Thanksgiving or Halloween over Christmas, so maybe they're trying to sabotage things. There's like a secret traitor.
Yeah.
Well,
one of the things I was thinking as well was that, you have, cartoonishly evil corporations. So you could have a little bit of a traitor mechanic where they manage to infiltrate Santa's workshop. So you need to find the corporate spies.
Oh, that's great. That's so good. Do you think Evil Corp would be played? Do you think there'd be Evil Corp players?
I don't know about that one. I'm thinking maybe it's more of a, the way you've got wolves in Den of Wolves, where you've got, the corporate spies, the elves who've been turned, but maybe not a whole team, because I don't know I think you could kind of do maybe like an asymmetric game where there's kind of like Santa's workshop, and then there's essentially the suits having their own game. Oh my gosh, yes, the Grinch, of course. Yeah, see, it writes itself. Yeah, so I think you could do potentially there's a slight side room where the corporate suits are in their sort of boardroom, and they're sort of organizing like marketing campaigns and things like that. But you'd have to make sure that they had like enough of a game. Yeah, that's kind of enough to work with.
Very cool. Maddie, great idea. Hope it. I think we're all in agreement.
Thank you.
So I think from here we're going to open it up a little bit to the audience. We have 16 minutes left. If anyone is in the audience, and I might need some help from Leslie or Stefan if they are there. Looks like there are 14 of us. If anyone in the audience has a little idea of their own that they want to pitch, please virtually raise your hand or otherwise signal. I see Bernie waving. We'll go ahead and unmute him. Oh, you are unmuted. Okay, Bernie, what is your pitch?
Okay, hi everybody. The Fields of the Cloth of Gold is about 50 miles from where I live. One of the appalling features of it was the tournament that went on between the 20 knights of both sides. One of the most corrupt set of jousting that ever went on in the Renaissance period. There was, they've also very recently found a large number of the plans of Henry's castle, the wooden castle he had built, and the size of it and the dimensions of it. And yes, it is an incredibly impressive piece, but of course, Francis as one was so much better and finer. And there was the other issue of food and music. And there was a large struggle of who could get the best musicians. And again, a lot of bribery of musicians throughout Europe trying to get them on side to do your party piece on the day. And for the second bit was, I loved seeing the bit about the Shah of Iran's 2000 year or whatever it was. An acquaintance of mine from many years ago did the uniforms for the Immortals, and he never worked again because he overcharged them 30 times from what it cost him. I think it cost him, say, $1 million, and he billed him 30 million because cost was wasn't a worry. And there's as a game mechanic, there's almost the more flash and brash it was, the more popular it was amongst the West, and more the Iranian people hated it because he really did down anything to do with the Muslim period. To him, it wasn't an important one. His golden age was the age of Xerxes and Darius, and it actually helped inflame the hatred that got rid of him, and with the waste of money of it all. So you could introduce mechanics like that in your incredible design, but all of these designs pale into insignificance to the Christmas one. It sounds absolutely awesome. I'd love to play involved in any way. I want to run the union for the elves. I know the mechanism for this, and it's just a hoot. Just a brilliant, happy idea. And post-Brexit, sorry, not post-Brexit, post-COVID, this could be a superb winner. I think it's a lovely idea.
Those are some great notes, Bernie. Go ahead, Maddie.
Sounds like I need to get a team together on this.
Well, yeah, I'd love to help. I've done a few mega games, and I'm sure you get a lot of others to help with sort of characteristics of this, because it is just so upbeat and so optimistic in these very grey times.
I'm not a super Christmas kind of a guy, but
I hate Christmas.
When this came out, it hit some kind of emotional thread, something. It reverberated somehow. This is just like that. I vote Maddie's. This is the best one of the conference.
Oh, Maddie, I think you've won the non-existent competition. Congrats.
Non-existent. I love non-existent competitions.
There you go. Well, that was great. Thank you for chiming up, Bernie. I should, if only I knew you were an expert in both the Field of Gold and the Iranian party. I would have.
No. For the Field of Cloth of Gold, I'm very much a Francis man. I thought all the chateaux he built up and down the Loire, some of the most beautiful buildings on the earth, at the expense of the French economy, but they are stunning.
That's great. It looks like we have a hand raised from Christian. Christian, are you there?
Yes, hi, I'm here. I didn't think I'd be able to be, but I turned out to be able to make just the end of this.
Yeah, well, welcome.
Thanks. I've been working a little bit on a mega game for a few months now, and just not going into a lot of depth and stuff. Some of the features that I've been trying to look at that I think might be of interest is I've tried to get rid of the need for a press player. I know a lot of games kind of have press players, and I know that that's kind of a very divided topic among players. So I've been working to create a system so that everyone is a press player, and they can kind of make their own press as they go.
Yeah, you want to elaborate at all?
Yeah, sure. So as part of the expedition game that I've been working on, there is a phase called Declarations, and it's like a 4-minute phase, and players will just go ahead, and if they have anything to announce to anybody, then they pay a certain price or they spend a card, and they can advertise, they can share information with each other. And so the news is very much dependent just on whether people want to share news instead of relying on any player in particular to work on it.
Yeah, it might. I mean, there's a lot of the devil's in the details, I feel, right? So I'll have to. I'm curious as to how, once you get Expedition a little bit farther along, I want to hear a full report as to how that works and what your takeaways are.
Yeah, I'll have to let everybody know how it plays out.
Mm-hmm.
Can't figure why you need press at all if you don't want it. Just do away with it.
Yeah, that was the goal. I just wanted information to be able to circulate.
Yeah. But there've been plenty of games that have done announcements like that and no press. Go ahead, do it. It works.
Will do. Thank you.
Well, that was great. This has been a great panel. Unless we have any more last-minute ideas, I think we're going to go ahead and end the panel to crown Maddie the queen of Wouldn't It Be Awesome. So everyone, congrats to Maddie, and thanks to everyone who showed up. These were some very, very cool ideas, and I really enjoyed talking about them with y'all.